Hey guys. So it's been a pretty crazy year. We all know why. I don't need to say why. So today I kind of want to talk about 2020 for a little bit. Not all the crap that goes on in the world. Go at CNN or Fox News or something. I don't know. But today I want to reflect. I want to reflect on this year. I want to reflect on myself. I want to reflect on really where YouTube is at, movies, all of that stuff. All the things that I've just been more consumed in because I've been avoiding the news at all costs. That's just not really my place to go. I have stayed completely away from anything related to that, basically. So why am I so dressed up? I don't know. It's the end of the year. I feel good about myself. But just because 2020 is over doesn't mean that lockdown's not going to end all of a sudden. I want to say this right now. 2020 for me has been actually pretty good when it comes to staying at home. I've always been more of a homeboy. I've been somebody who just likes being at home. That's just a place where I just enjoy being. A lot of people love having an outlet at school, at work, all those places. But for me, I just love being at home. So it's been great. It's been great for me to just reflect, be at home, to really set my mindset right. I also got to watch a lot of movies that I would never normally see because I'd just be too busy all the time. So this has just really been my year to really grow as a person. I feel like that's how it's been for a lot of other people. Today, basically, I just want to go through and talk about a lot of different things. I'm going to cut this up into different topics. I'll leave timestamps down below if you don't want to watch this whole thing because it's going to be really, really long, I swear. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into the year. One of the biggest things for my channel was I started my What I Watched in Quarantine series review. I started watching Carson Ronquist's videos, What I Watched This Month. He talks about every film he saw this month. He puts his little score right underneath the poster of the movie when he talks about it. So I was like, I kind of want to do that. And I basically copied his style. I got a lot of comments about that. And I felt kind of bad about that. So for my December one, I changed the background, because I'm a diverse creator. That's who I am. It was a great way for me to reach a lot more people because I'm able to, get my thoughts out all at once in just one video, and they usually range from 20 to 30 minutes usually, and they're not that long. I mean, when you're packing in that many reviews all in one video, it's a really nice, easy way to get all your thoughts out at once. And it was always rewarding when people would comment on them, say, this is what I saw this month, And I'm constantly getting acknowledged for, that was good editing. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that. But when people are actually in on it and they're actually commenting below what they saw during the month, that means I feel like they care too. I really appreciate it. And it's just, I've always had trouble trying to find out how do I write a proper review with the beginning and end and wrapping it all up into one video. Making short little reviews and then just compiling them into one video is just a way easier way to get my thoughts out all at once, and then everyone knows what I saw during the month. And if there's a movie that they think is underappreciated or they don't think is talked about enough and they want to hear my thoughts on it, it's in the video, and they can hear it. I always love it when a YouTuber does that, when they talk about movies that I like. So yeah, that is definitely a big highlight for the year for my channel. If you've gotten used to me, you've probably realized I just do that every month, and I'm hoping to keep doing it throughout 2021, but it depends. I mean, things happen, things change. Crap. So let me tell you about Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a really cool site. The cool thing about Letterboxd is that you're actually able to, get your thoughts out about film, so just any kind of review. That's how I get my thoughts out, and I'm really glad. So it automatically makes a diary for you with all the films you've seen on what dates. It's automatically put into their database, and it's really easy, to get your thoughts across. But I want to make it clear what Letterboxd actually is, and it's a really, really great way to communicate your thoughts about film. It's a great way for me to get my thoughts out. And so if I can't get my thoughts out on my YouTube channel, which usually used to be my outlet for talking about movies, Letterboxd was able to give that to me without having to put all the work into editing videos. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I use it a lot for a lot of different things, and I think that's a really great way to get your thoughts out. You can also make lists. It's a really nice way to do rankings and top 10s, all that stuff that YouTubers usually do. But you can just do that simply through making a list. You just say make a list, and then you go, and they have a little thing where you can enter in a film, and then you enter in a film, and then it, you know, you can drag things around, change it, edit it whenever you want. For me, like if I was to make a David Fincher movies ranked from worst to best, I could just go in, title it David Fincher's movies ranked from worst to best, and then I would just add in his movies. And then I would just drag them around. If I feel like it changes, I can go back and edit, change them around. It's just a really, really easy way to just do that instead of having to make a whole video about it. Because I do like making YouTube videos, I just think that there are easier ways to get my thoughts out about things. So Letterboxd kind of provides that for me. It's a really, really simple, fast, easy way to do this, and I would highly, highly recommend it. It's really nice. I love the layout of the site. I love how you can do anything with your profile. You can add a description. It's basically just like any kind of social media site, except it's just for movies, and you can just review movies, and it's really, really nice. It's super easy to use. I started it about like back in January 2020, I believe, and I got the hang of it after just a couple of days of using it. So it's not very hard to use. It's really, really simple. So yeah, that's like all I really have to say about this. But Letterboxd, guys, strongly recommend it. It's a really, really awesome site. I'm not promoting them. They're not paying me. If you make a Letterboxd profile, one thing I strongly recommend is just spend like a couple of hours, maybe like 1 or 2 hours, maybe not even that long, it doesn't take that long, but go through other people's lists, surf the site, really get the hang of it, get the feel of it, but also mark what films you have seen. For me, it took me a while to mark a lot of films, but now I'm almost to 1,000 films that I've seen. You want to make it accurate to the amount of films you've actually watched in your entire life. Know if you've seen a film or not, how you feel about the film. You don't have to write a review, but you can just simply put a star rating on there, and it's really easy. For a lot of people, there are a lot of movies that they've never talked about on their YouTube channels, they've never talked about through Letterboxd, through reviews and stuff. But I still search up the film and I still see that they've seen it and that they've rated it. So I feel like that's a big, big thing that you should do once you get the site, because that's what I did. And I am really glad I did, because a lot of people that follow me know my thoughts on certain things now. They know how I feel about something. So that's really it. Make sure, get a Letterboxd account if you really are passionate about talking about movies, because it's a really, 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 really nice way to get your thoughts out, and I'm so glad I have an account. So if you haven't already too, to follow me on Letterboxd, because I have a lot of movies logged on there, so yeah. So for the movie world, I introduced myself to a lot of different things. Big thing, I got into David Fincher this year. The only film I saw from him was Fight Club. That was the only movie I watched prior to 2020, but then I got around to watching The Social Network, and then that led me into some other ones. But Seven is really the movie that started that, and made me decide I kind of want to do a David Fincher ranked video, because I really like his movies. Love the guy's style. I really love the way he directs the film, the way he visually makes everything look. Every film he does is aesthetically pleasing. They're all beautiful looking, all incredibly well written, and something I really like about him is that I don't think any of his scripts are actually written by him. They're usually adapted from a book. They're not original stories. They're not stories that he came up with, but somehow he's still able to make it his own, like his own unique little thing, and that's what makes him such an interesting filmmaker, is that he doesn't really have that originality going for him when it comes to the script. All that originality comes from the execution. That's what makes him such a big name today, is because he's so good at executing those stories that someone else created. And he can make it his own baby, his own thing. I really admire him about that, for doing that. All of his movies, I think, are perfectly made. When it comes to a filmmaking perspective, all of his movies are nearly flawless. Cinematography, score, he knows how to mix everything well together, that it just feels really smooth and slick. They all have a lot of style, but the substance really comes from the scripts that he takes from, and he's very careful about which scripts he takes. And that's why his movies are so good, is because He never just picks some random story that doesn't work. He always picks a story that works for him. And his worst movie, Benjamin Button, isn't even that bad of a movie. What does that say? I really like Benjamin Button personally, so that's saying a lot. So yeah, he was a big highlight of the year. Really got me pumped about movies again. Martin Scorsese, I also continued watching a lot of his films, namely The Departed. I think I saw that earlier for the first time this year. And what I love about The Departed is its ability to balance a bunch of different storylines with a bunch of different characters and still make it really exciting, always maintaining that energy. I always love the way Scorsese approaches his films. They're always very character driven. He cares a lot about the people. And the most energetic movie, if I have to be honest with you, that I saw for the first time this year is The Wolf of Wall Street. I saw this on TV. It was heavily edited, but it was incredibly entertaining, so energetic. Every shot, every frame was just oozing with some kind of adrenaline, and you know they put that adrenaline there starting with the script, and then the execution just heightened all of those senses. The film works on every level, and it really gets me hyped. It makes me want to make movies, seeing things like that. The way he controls the camera, the way he makes his characters come to life. He's a filmmaker I really like, even if not all of his movies have always clicked with me like they're these masterpieces, every single one. But I really like him overall as a filmmaker. I also got into some other things, Disney remakes. I've always been very familiar with them. I've seen the Kenneth Branagh Cinderella. I like that movie. I think it's fine. I saw Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book, which I think is fine. And then I saw Guy Ritchie's Aladdin, and I wanted to die. That movie is one of the worst concoctions I've ever seen. I hated the live-action remake of Aladdin because it's just... They stretch it out. They take this original story that works so well originally, and then they just stretch it out over a 2-hour runtime, and it doesn't work that way. The story was so bare bones, and that's why it worked so well, is because it felt very contained, and they did the most with what they had with that runtime. But stretching it out another 45 minutes is gonna get really boring really fast, and this movie is so boring. The approach to it, the detail, everything, it feels so off. I felt so distant from everything happening. I never felt like anything was real. I didn't buy anything on screen. And I felt a lot of people have kind of just accepted the reality that, oh, this is a bad movie. It's not very realistic and it's kind of stupid, right? And I could see this being a dumb, fun, guilty pleasure, but I can't get any fun out of it. The movie is so boring. The movie is just... It doesn't have that energy I would have wanted it to have. Even with Will Smith in the mix, Will Smith's performance isn't even that good. I mean, he's not even that, like, lively in it. He's not that lively of a presence. Like, he's funny sometimes, but most of the time, a lot of what he's doing feels forced. It doesn't really feel like Will Smith being Will Smith. And I feel like it's so close to that original film. They could have done something completely original with the story, but they didn't. I also saw Mulan. I hated it. Mulan is one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's one of my least favorite movies I've ever seen. And to be honest, yeah, I'm going to be talking about this in a couple of minutes. But that movie just doesn't work on any level. It is so stupid. But it takes itself so seriously that I can't... Like, what am I supposed to latch onto? So that's what really bothers me about these remakes, is that I feel like they feel they need to be so close to the original film, and then they start putting their own spin, making things different, but in the end, that original film's always going to be better. They can't do anything to really improve these stories, because the stories were so magically told to begin with. They try to add more layers, and I'm like, you're not supposed to, because they're originally supposed to be simple stories. They're not supposed to be complex. These remakes just don't understand that. And I don't really want to blame the filmmakers. I'm always going to blame the mouse. I'm always going to blame Disney, because Disney is awful. I feel like Disney has been so consumed. They don't understand the people anymore. They don't understand what they want, and so they just are like, well, we'll just, you know, give the viewers what they want, and they just throw the same thing because people just go to the theater to see something familiar. To be honest, guys, I'm going to say this right now, to the camera, to everyone watching right now. If you're watching this, please don't go watch these remakes. Don't support them. Don't give them the money. They already have it. Get these giant box office records anymore. I don't think it's necessary. I think they've already gotten that. We need to make them realize that these remakes shouldn't work and they shouldn't be making money. And once that happens, then maybe they can start making original content again, because everything that Disney announced all those weeks ago, fake. It felt like they're just taking everything they already made and making spin-offs and sequels and trequels and prequels. They don't really seem like they're giving their effort anymore. Can you make something original, please, Disney? I'm asking you, please. This year I've really come to this realization that I do really appreciate filmmaking, and I've really realized I need to give all the credit to these people that put all this work into these films. I know I just wrote off Disney because the thing about Disney is they have money and they can actually put effort in, and they don't. With a lot of indie filmmakers, independent filmmakers, I've really opened my eyes into on how I feel about filmmaking as a whole. There are a lot of independent filmmakers, a lot of them coming from A24, that are up and coming and really inspire me to be a filmmaker. And so I really suggest go support these movies, go support anything that A24 puts out. They make great stuff. Support independent filmmakers, please. I've really come to this realization because I've been watching a lot of Chris Duckman over the pandemic, and obviously I love Chris Duckman. He's like my favorite YouTuber ever, but what I really like about him is he always acknowledges all the work put into everything. He always understands the process, and I don't understand the process because I've never actually had to make a budgeted movie before, put money into something, because everything I usually I make for free, but he understands that, and so I've really felt like I need to step up, really make sure that these people get their voice heard, because I feel like it's really important for filmmakers to always get their chance, and I feel like every movie deserves a chance, every aspect of it. TV shows are something I never really got into a lot because I feel they're so time consuming. You really need to get invested. You need to care about other people's lives, and that's the hard part, is that I have my own life. Why should I care about someone else's, That's the thing I like about movies, is that you can be invested in a storyline. Movies done right, if the story is executed right, you can get invested in their storylines and only like a 2-hour runtime. And so that's the nice thing about that. With shows, it's different. You gotta get invested, especially if the show is still running. You don't know when it's going to end, and that's the annoying part. And so getting into these TV shows was a little scary at first, and then once I got into them, to say the least, I wasn't disappointed. From the 3 shows I've seen this year, I wasn't really disappointed by any of them. I really like all of them. So I guess I'm just gonna go in from worst to best. Let's start off with my least favorite of the bunch, which is Cobra Kai. Now, Cobra Kai is not a bad show at all. I find it very investing. I find it very fun. It has a very mainstream feel to it, and I think that's what makes it work. It doesn't really miss a step. It's always doing something, and that's what makes it a lot of fun. It's really investing. It's easy to get hooked up in it. In some ways, that's a bad thing because it's kind of time consuming, and I don't know when it's going to end, because apparently they're making a season 4 and season 3 has not even come out yet at the time of recording this video. Like the show a lot, but I have a lot of problems, and that's mostly in the plot. I think they do a good job building the characters, because I think I never really wanted a spin-off to the Karate Kid ever. That's not what I wanted ever. But the way that they do it and approach it is very natural. It never feels too in your face, like we're making a spin-off, and I like that about it. I do appreciate it. What I really didn't like is just kind of how they went about with the actual plot. The plot's not very creative. It's a little repetitive. The storytelling, not that good. And overall, it's just not that deep. And I feel like sometimes it acts like it is, and that's the annoying part. I see a bunch of videos talking about, oh, this person is the villain, and this person's who's the villain of the show? And I'm like, no one is. It's not a bad show at all. I really like it. I really kept watching it. I got into it. I enjoyed it. It's good. Now, I think they do a good job building the characters and developing them interesting enough ways. I mean, Johnny is easily my favorite character. He's probably the most developed, but his development isn't that creative or unique. They don't really do anything like that insanely different with that. It's more of the execution, I guess, is what made it work. And that's why Johnny is still my favorite character. I also don't love the writing of the show. Like, I think the dialogue in it can be funny, but sometimes it feels very forced down your throat. The first season I really like. I think it's solid. I think it builds the characters. I think it has a nice setup. But the second season is... The second season I think I give like a 6 out of 10. And the first season I gave like an 8, which is a very, very solid score. But I'm a little more iffy on the second season, and you know why? It's because they get so cliched. I don't like the way that they go about the story. They build up these characters, make them kind of interesting, but then they kind of take a dump all over it in the second season. I don't like what they did with it. The second season's not bad, but it does get very repetitive. They do a lot of things with, oh, this person's friends with this person, and then they break up, and then, oh, they get back together again. Don't analyze it. Just try to sit back, have a good time. Yeah, the second season, it gets a little repetitive. The first season, it's solid. The finale for the second season, why very climactic and cinematic and powerful and dramatic. If you really look at it, it's kind of ridiculous. So I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen Cobra Kai. It's on Netflix now. I'm really glad that it got on Netflix. It's a good show, but it's not the best or anything. Don't think it's going to be the next Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad is better than this, and that leads me into my second show, which is Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad really shocked me because I think what everything it's doing, it's very, very artsy while also being very entertaining, and so it can please both critics and audiences. It's kind of one of those rare movies you find that pleases both the critics and the audience. Breaking Bad is a show I really enjoy, but the thing is I'm gonna have to confess, it's not that addicting. I feel like people treat this show like it's an actual drug, like they can't stop thinking about it. This is one of the best examples I've seen of live action visual storytelling. And when you have the script, when you have the dialogue, you have the music, the acting, all that stuff, it's very powerful and it all works together very well. This is one of the best things I've ever seen, you know? And yes, it uses it as a show, as a medium to really tell a story, but with this they never waste a moment, and so it works because the reason that it's a show is they're trying to spend time with the characters and really give them something to do, and they're trying to really develop them, making you get to know them. Every character is fleshed out. Any character that gets introduced into the storyline has some sort of an impact on the plot later. That's what makes the show so interesting. Also, if I didn't mention this is probably the best acted show I've ever seen, but not just show, it's probably better acted than any movie I've ever seen because of how naturalistic it is. If you have not seen Breaking Bad, I strongly recommend it. I am excited to finish it. The finale is probably going to kill my soul. But currently my favorite episode is actually episode 2 of season 2, Grilled. Maybe the most intense thing I've ever seen. My nerves were crawling out of my body, and then they were attacking me from the outside. That is how intense it was. It was intense than any movie I think I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot because I've seen the movie Prisoners. And for number 1, my favorite show that I've seen this year is Avatar: The Last Airbender. My favorite thing I've seen all year. I'm just so glad that I was able to check it out. I was kind of skeptical going into it. I heard a lot about it as a kid. You know, I grew up and I never really saw it. And then now, you know, as a 16-year-old kid, I thought I'd go into it feeling like, I don't know, underwhelmed, like it was just made for children, and I'm never really into fantasy things very much. I never got into Harry Potter as a kid. In my opinion, this is pretty much a perfect show when it comes to an overall narrative level. Not every episode is perfect. There are a lot of filler episodes that are unnecessary, but as an overarching story, it's perfect. How they set up the characters, how they tell the narrative overall, how they build the world, and I think that's the most impressive thing is the world building. This is some of the best world building I've ever seen. How it integrates culture into it, how it integrates action into it, how it just develops its characters in a natural way. It doesn't just give them a separate episode to shine. They do give them their little moments to shine. They don't give them an entire episode just to focus the spotlight on them, because they're still telling a story in these episodes. And in the filler episodes, when there's not that much going on, that's kind of the time to also build the characters up. But I find every single character to be awesome. Zuko is maybe one of the best developed characters in fiction history. We got Aang, who is one of the best protagonists I think
ever. He's so optimistic with everything that's being thrown at him, and he does a good job really responding to the situations in an appropriate way. And that appropriate reaction seems to get more and more mature as the show goes along. We got Katara, who just strings the whole group together, who's kind of the heart and soul of the show. We got Toph, probably my favorite character in the entire series. We got Iroh, who's just a really good-hearted mix of Mr. Miyagi and Yoda put into one. So I'm telling you to go check it out now. So yeah, those are my TV show picks. I'm gonna give you back to Ethan with the suit on. Yeah.
I also had a really cool opportunity this year, which I got to become a part of YouTube's biggest, most awesome community ever. Now, the story about how I met these people was I was kind of getting a lot of comments, mostly starting in, I think, May. It was like May and June. I started getting a lot of comments from all these different people saying, well, you know, this is so cool, good video, it's cool seeing small-time YouTubers, we all need to look out for each other. And I'm like, okay, there's something kind of fishy, because it seemed like there's some kind of interconnected underground society going on here, like in my comment section. So I was like a little like, okay. I kind of looked through, I looked at everyone's channels, I saw that they were collabing with each other, and then I found out that there's this thing called the Critic Community, which was just this whole society, this community of a bunch of kids my age that all like movies and talk about movies. And it's really cool. It was a really awesome thing to see that there are people my age that share my passion. And then eventually, like, I contacted a lot of them. I did a collab with Nolan, I think back in August. I did one on his channel. And then eventually I just got a text and they said, hey, you want to join their server? And I was like, okay. I only used Discord once, and it was like in like 7th grade, and I really hated it. I hated the layout. It's been a really good experience being able to talk with other people, talk to other creators. It's just one big family, you know? And it's cool because if you really think about it, we're all from a bunch of different places around the world. There are some people in the UK, there are some people in Canada. We have a lot of people just kind of all over the place, and we're all kind of connected through YouTube. And we got on YouTube in the first place through movies. It's like YouTube, like movies kind of brought us together. I think that's a really cool thought, and big highlight of the year. Really awesome opportunity that I was able to be a part of. I don't have anything for this video. I only have an introduction and a conclusion. Like, huh? So for this section of the video, I'm going to be discussing all of the movies I saw in 2020, ranked from worst to best. Now, I originally planned on adding short films and things like that I have seen during this year, but then I saw over 10 films. I've seen 11. I just decided to take the short films out. So these are just major motion pictures. Okay, that's what I'm covering. I hated Mulan. I hated every minute of it, to be honest. I don't really like the approach to this story at all. I think it's an interesting idea to remake Mulan, because a lot of these Disney live-action remakes I can't really see in live action. When they announce them, I'm like, Beauty and the Beast, really? I can't see that. But with Mulan, I can definitely see that. I can see a crouching tiger, hidden dragon, martial arts story. I can really see something interesting coming out of that, but it doesn't work because they just don't have a good script, and they don't have a good director behind the camera. They don't really have anything really good going into it, and so it feels awful from start to finish. Nothing about this felt right. It just felt really awkward and off-putting. And the reason I guess I really despise the movie is because I have such a personal connection with Mulan, like the original film, because that movie was like one of my all-time favorite films as a kid, and it still is to this day. I grew up on it. It's really, really important to me, to my life, and they screwed up everything. Just because you can make a cool action sequence doesn't make the film good. You need to put thought into the script. You need to put thought into the messages they're trying to convey. And this movie does a really, really bad job at doing that, because what are you really trying to say? What is the real message you're trying to say with this film? I don't know, because they take away everything about that original film that works so well, and then they don't give us anything in return. They take out the songs, they take out Mushu, they take out like all of the messages, and what do they put in there to fill those gaps? Nothing. So it feels really empty, and that was a huge, terrible mistake that they made. Also, getting Nikki Caro to direct the film doesn't really work, because I feel like Nikki Caro could direct like small time films. She directed McFarlane USA, which is a film I actually really like. I thought it was a good movie. It worked. It was solid. It wasn't amazing or anything, and her direction didn't add that much to the table, but she's picks projects, or at least she's hired for projects that don't really work for her. Like, she does things that are really big and overtly ambitious. She did the movie The Zookeeper's Wife, which I don't hate. I think it's fine. But if you're covering a movie about the Holocaust, about World War II, you need to, like, do something besides fine. And she does not do that well at all with that movie. Her direction is really bland with that film. And then you come to Mulan, and she does a very similar thing. She doesn't bring any of that heart, that emotion that original film had. Now, I don't like comparing a remake to the original that much, but that's exactly what Disney did. They literally remade a movie they already made, so I'm going to do that with this one. What I really hate about the execution of the film is they lose so much focus of what made that original movie important. When you have that original movie, Mulan was a character who had flaws, and she was somebody who didn't really fit into her gender role. She couldn't really do the job of just, getting married and bearing children. She couldn't really do that. She didn't know how to. She didn't know how to be feminine. But at the same time, she can't really be manly, and it was her trying to discover where she fits in with the world, and they do such a good job developing her as a character. She starts on this journey where she goes to this camp, and all these men are not very good soldiers. They try to be manly, but they really aren't. And then she goes along with them with the "I'll make a man out of you" sequence, which is actually, I think, one of the best montages ever in a movie. They have her on the same par as men, building character, becoming better, becoming a better soldier with these guys, showing that women can be just on par with men, even better. And that's what I love about the third act of that original film, because it has Shane, who's just, the damsel in distress, basically. They switched the roles. It's a really interesting way, and I feel like it was really ahead of its time when it comes to that particular third act. But with this movie, what they decide to do is they give her superpowers. They give her this chi, and they never really explain what it is. And they make the main message of the movie, you can't hide who you really are. I don't know. And they add this unnecessary sister character in the movie, and she makes the movie worse, because by adding in the sister character, and at the end, the sister character gets married and is going to bear children, fitting into her gender role, whereas Mulan is a soldier. And it basically says, if you're average, if you are just like a normal person, you're not going anywhere in life, and you're going to fit into those gender roles. But if you have superpowers, then you can rise to the top. By making Mulan a Mary Sue, it completely detracts from what made that original movie so special. Mulan was a likable character. She was somebody with a heart, somebody with feelings, somebody that was clever and had a brain. And then with this one, she's just, super awesome and kicks people around. She also doesn't have any emotion. I've heard people say, well, most people in China don't show emotion. I don't know if that's true or not, and I'm not going to give a particular stance on that, but I hear that, and I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter how culturally accurate it is when it comes to just building a likable character. I don't care about Mulan in this movie at all, and they don't give me any reason to. It just kind of jumps into it, and it feels so lame. And I literally hated everything they did with the character, the places they took it. It's just a really awful movie, and even though it looks kind of nice when it comes to the production design, the costumes, they don't do anything with it. They don't put thought into the script, and so it just doesn't work on any level at all. And that's why it is the bottom of the list. I hated this movie. I hated every second of it. It is a terrible, terrible movie. I think it is probably, Disney's worst live-action remake yet. And this is kind of the point in time where I'm saying, Disney, stop doing this. It's stupid. It's a waste of time. Don't do this. Seriously, stop. I don't really want to talk that much about Enola Holmes because I don't really have that much to say about it. I didn't really find it that interesting. I'm glad a lot of people enjoyed it. Its approach feels very energetic. The people making it seem like they care. Millie Bobby Brown is really, really energetic in this role. But then the camera work, the color grading, all of that stuff feels just really toned down. It's a really brown, gray, looking movie, and it just doesn't work. I feel like if you have an energetic script, you can do a lot with the execution. You can make this execution really, really bold and really adrenaline fueled, but they don't really do that. It's just kind of an ugly looking movie. Also, I don't really like the editing in the film. I can see what they're trying to do, making it very, fast-paced and energetic, but it feels like the editing makes it feel like it's a trailer. It feels like it's hyping up to something, and that thing never really happens. So the whole film just feels like one giant trailer, and the movie never actually happens. It never really gave me a reason to care, and there's a lot of issues with the script. Oh my gosh. One thing I didn't really like about the screenplay for this film was they have a lot of things happening. They're like being thrown at you, and they set up all these storylines, all these story beats, and then they never really do that much with them. They start a storyline and then they don't really conclude it. They just kind of move on to something else. It feels like 7 different movies in one, and it feels really, really disconnected. It doesn't flow very well. I didn't really enjoy myself during this movie. I'm glad a lot of people did. It just wasn't my kind of movie that I wanted to sit through. And I feel like the Rotten Tomatoes reception was really overwhelming. Like, what the heck, 90%? Really? Is that what you're gonna give this movie? And the movie's fine. I think it's really mediocre and average. I don't really have that much to say about it. I just really wasn't into the film. Obviously, if you like it, that's okay, but for me personally, I really did not enjoy myself. I think the social dilemma has a lot of interesting ideas it's trying to tackle. Namely, I like the idea of talking about how these apps can affect your mental state and how they can affect society as a whole. The problem is they don't really get to that till like the last 30 minutes of the movie, and I feel like they had so much wasted space, wasted potential of them just repeating the same information. They're like, well, technology is bad, all these things, it's, they're trying to hook you in, and it's business, and they're corrupt, and blah, blah, blah. But they don't really give me a reason to be like, well, I don't, technology and, social media is not very good for me. They don't really give me, like, a sincere reason, because they keep telling you that it's bad, without saying the effect it can actually have. And then those last 30 minutes come in, and that's where it really brings it home and says, yeah, this is like some really dark stuff that could really happen. It shows how it could affect society, how it affects politics. It's really scary. But that's just the last 30 minutes. The rest of it feels like it's just wasting time. And I didn't really like sitting through that aspect. I like those last 30 minutes. I think it brings it home in a clever way, but the rest of it just feels like a bunch of professional tech people saying the same thing over and over again, just using different nouns and adjectives and synonyms and stuff to make themselves sound smarter. But essentially they're all saying the same thing, and it just doesn't really feel like it needed to be an hour and a half movie. I felt like this felt like 3 hours because it was so tedious in the execution, and I feel like it could have been much better than what we got. Onward was a big waste of potential, to be honest. I think it was well paced. I think what it's trying to say is interesting. The execution, though, is not very good. I think it's a, gorgeously animated movie, obviously. I mean, it's from Disney Pixar, so, what do you expect? But what I don't really like is they don't really give you a hook. They don't really give you a reason to care, and that's really where it starts to just go to middle tier Pixar for me. They don't really give you like this moment where I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to care about the characters now. They just kind of jump into it. This feels more like a Disney film or a Sony Pictures film rather than a Pixar film. Pixar films are movies that are adult, that are different than most of the mainstream media we get. It's stuff that's a lot more intimate, a lot more thought-provoking. They make you think, they're very intelligent. But Onward just feels like a random quest movie. And it tries to add in that heart, you know, the brotherhood, the dead father. But what they do with the dead father thing feels so cartoonishly stupid. Because they just have a moment where he's like, oh, well, my dad is dead. I'm like, but am I supposed to care? It just feels so predictable and formulaic. They don't really have that moment where I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that's really emotional. You know, they don't do that here. And it feels really, really mediocre when it comes to that. The things I did like Chris Pratt's character. I think Barley was his name. I didn't like the trope they did where he's like, oh, I'm a failure and people keep calling me a failure and I'm going to get mad over that. I think that's a really predictable and stupid trope, but I do like his character. I think he's somebody who has a lot of energy, and Chris Pratt does a good job, even though I think that character was specifically designed for Jack Black. I don't really like Tom Holland as that much as an actor, but I don't really like this character because they try so hard to make him this relatable teenager, but they don't really give him any unique qualities besides, oh, well, he's awkward and he doesn't have that many friends. They just don't do that much with that. And I think the ending is clever. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but I think it is clever enough for what it's trying to say. I just don't know why people made a big deal out of the ending. It's not that great. So, yeah, I mean, if you love Onward, that's okay. I'm not saying don't love that movie because this is just my opinion, obviously. But I think there are way better movies out there that deal with death, that deal with brotherhood, that have that amount of heart. There are way better movies than Onward. Onward is just a kid's movie to me. It doesn't have the adult nature that a lot of Pixar's other movies have. And so it just feels like middle tier stuff. It just feels like a really forgettable movie that I'm probably never going to watch again unless someone else recommends it to me. Basically, my story with this movie is that I saw it on Netflix. It kept showing up on the homepage. I saw trailers everywhere before YouTube videos. It was like a movie I saw around, but I don't like Will Ferrell movies. I don't really like Netflix comedies very much. I don't think they are that funny. And then I saw, Rachel McAdams was in it, and I like Rachel McAdams, so I was like, should I watch it? I do like Rachel McAdams. And no. Basically, my dad saw it, and he was like, this movie is really good. I loved this movie. And I was like, oh, okay. And I saw it, and it definitely wasn't as good as he said it was. He loves the movie, and I'm glad he does. I just don't think it's that great. Some pretty fantastic songs. I think it has a really memorable soundtrack. I think the songs are catchy, but it's also really clever on how it, talks about the music industry. I think it reflects on that in a really funny way. Also, Rachel McAdams. I love Rachel McAdams. I think she's one of the most likable actresses working today. She is somebody who, whenever I see her in, she always puts a smile on my face, no matter what it is. She can play any role, and she'll still make me happy. I don't really like Will Ferrell. I don't find him that funny. I don't know why he keeps making the same movie over and over again. But I am giving this movie a 7 out of 10, mostly because of the film's pure heart and the chemistry between Ferrell and McAdams. They do a really good job here. Also, Dan Stevens. He's really funny in the film as well. I think the biggest problem with the movie is obviously the length. This movie's like 2 hours long, and I don't know why American comedies do this. It's a really, really obnoxious thing they do now, is they make these comedies so long, they get so tedious, and they stretch out these jokes that they just aren't that funny. And there's a point in this movie where I was not laughing at all. It just wasn't funny. Kind of the moment where the whole love triangle, love square thing happened, and it just was so tired. Like, it just felt so tropey and so predictable. It brings it home with a really satisfying third act that's funny and sweet and charming. It also just introduced me to like what this is. I didn't know the Eurovision Song Contest was a thing. It's this huge thing apparently. I had no idea it existed, but it's funny that a comedy starring Will Ferrell brought this to my attention. I just think it's solid. I think it isn't great, and it's not exactly average because it's heightened by just the likability of the whole thing, the cuteness of it all. I kind of got everything I really needed to. A lot of people went into this not really knowing much about Citizen Kane, not really knowing much about David Fincher as a director, so they went in with open eyes, and they were really disappointed because they didn't really know what they were going to get. I expected this to be a lot more about the writing of Citizen Kane, all the rights and all that stuff, but it involved politics a lot more than I thought it was going to. And if you know me in real life, I hate politics more than anything. I think it's the most obnoxious thing in the world. It just brings nothing but anger out of people, and I just really hate talking about it. I hate discussing it. I hate looking into it. I don't watch the news. But the way they integrate politics into this film is really clever and surprisingly interesting. For someone like David Fincher, he can make any concept or any idea interesting. And he does such a good job here making this story interesting, and I was not expecting that at all. I really appreciated what he did with this film. I think it's a really different movie that we've gotten this year, but my biggest issues with it's mostly just very emotionally distant. It feels so far away from the audience, but I think what's able to bring me into it back again is just that study of Hollywood, that study of figures in Hollywood, that politicalness that was involved back in the day. It really got me interested. I was not expecting to be that invested in the political aspect. I thought I'd care more about the Citizen Kane stuff. To be honest, the Citizen Kane stuff really wasn't that interesting to me. Amanda Seyfried as well is fantastic in the movie. She steals every scene she's in. She's so likable. She's just so magnetic when she shows up on screen. And she really, really improved this experience. And honestly, I would have wanted to see so much more of her in the movie. I think she was really, really good. From a technical perspective, this is probably the best shot film of the year. Every shot in this looks incredible. The way they use smoke, the way they use dark colors, everything, it just looks so good, and it really inhabits that time period. Yeah, it's not one of David Fincher's bests. It's one of his lower tiered movies, I think. But he hasn't really made a bad movie before, so I mean, what you gonna say? Tenet is stupid. The more I reflect on it, the more I really realize that this movie it's just dumb. We got a lot of entertainment value out of it, but I didn't really get that much out of the plot or the characters because they're not really there. This movie doesn't really have a real plot, I feel like. It's just jumping around doing random things. It never really feels like, what is the point of this? What am I really watching? What is the motivations of our characters? What is happening? No one's really fleshed out. People are just doing things, and then they're like, well, we're spies. And that's the only explanation they have. So there's no real explanation as to what's happening. And it just feels overly complex, but they kind of act like you know exactly what's going on. Nolan also does the thing I really hate that Nolan does, where he just puts the bass and the score and the sound effects all on top of the dialogue, so you can't hear what anybody's saying. And it's a really, really annoying approach. And I feel like at this point, it just feels like Nolan making fun of himself, taking everything he does best, and then doing everything he does really obnoxiously, all of the things he gets made fun of, dialing that up to 11. It's basically Nolan the movie. That's what it feels like. And I don't really think it works out as well as it probably could. It's a movie I'm so frustrated with because I feel like there are a lot of good things it could be doing. It just doesn't do that much with this concept. It just feels like this giant extravaganza. Visually, the movie is awesome. This is probably Nolan's best looking movie. That or Dunkirk. Every shot just looks awesome. It's just such an entertaining movie, such an entertaining ride. And so yeah, there are a lot of really stupid things. And overall, I'm like, why the heck is anything happening? But watching this in a theater with this really loud sound system, it was really awesome. And I think it's mostly just for the experience. It's for the visual experience. It's just for the entertainment factor. But yeah, it's a stupid movie. But I just had a lot of fun with it. I want to get this out of the way. I hate the fan base for this show. I think it is really gross. There's just a really disturbing amount of people that take these people, these real life people, and they treat them like anime characters. They start shipping together people. They're like, oh, John Lawrence and Lafayette. It's just really gross to me. And they treat these people like they're characters, which they are, but they're still based off of actual people. You can't really do that. That's just gross to me. And I hate the way people treat the show. It's nasty. And a lot of the hardcore fans as well. I'm like, okay, It's not that deep. Yeah, I did enjoy Hamilton for the most part. I'm not a huge, like, musical guy. I do enjoy a lot of musicals, but I'm not really, like, fully into the stories. I don't take them that seriously because the time stage plays are supposed to be really over the top anyway. They're supposed to be big and loud and a little goofy. I never really take them that seriously, and a lot of people take this show extremely seriously. I don't think it's meant to. First off, Lin-Manuel Miranda is kind of a genius when it comes to writing lyrics. This is some of the best lyrics I've ever heard. It's not really the best music. I don't think the note variance is that interesting. They don't do that much interesting in regards to the actual rhythm of everything. Really, the lyrics is where it's just poetic. It's fantastic what he's able to come up with. And I think all the actors do a fantastic job with inhabiting those characters. Honestly, my least favorite performance in the entire show is probably Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hamilton. I don't really like him that much in this role. Tries a little too hard to be likable and doesn't really work out that well. Everyone else is great. Leslie Odom Jr. is a real standout here. Christopher Jackson, Daveed Diggs. These are just really great actors that really inhabit these roles, really inhabit these people. And yeah, it's not that historically accurate, but I kind of assume that going in. I also like the way it's shot. It really kind of makes you feel like you're there in the room where it happened. You know, it gets history across in a really fast-paced way. And it's funny, too. I was not expecting it to have this much humor in it. When it comes down to the overall structure of it, the skeleton of the story, it's not all that new, and I don't know why people act like this is such an original story. It feels like a Scorsese movie, except it's a musical, and everyone's rapping everything, you know? But it reminds me of Scorsese a lot when it comes to the energy and when it comes to all of our characters. They're really fleshed out and really energetic. So yeah, this is not the most original story, but I did enjoy myself. I felt very entertained, even though it's nearly 3 hours. Again, I am not a Broadway guy. I am not this huge nerd when it comes to this stuff. I am somebody who just saw it and really enjoyed it. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's terrible. I just really had a good time. I think it's solid. I'm going to get this out of the way now. I think this is the best movie of the year. I love a lot about it, but it didn't really hit me on that personal level that a lot of Charlie Kaufman movies usually do. Now, I've only seen 2 Charlie Kaufman movies, and they were both written by him, not directed by him. What I really like about those films is that they're very intimate. They're very close to the human experience while being really original at the same time. Unlike Nolan, he feels like he's really in touch with the human spirit and how humans think. And that's why those movies are so much more personal to me. They're so much more relatable. And with this movie, he does a good job with it, but it's definitely not as personal as Adaptation and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind are. When it comes to his direction, I think this is a beautifully directed movie. I mean, every shot looks fantastic. I also like the aspect ratio as well. By making it a little more tight, it can make it both claustrophobic and uncomfortable, but also kind of inviting. Like you're kind of all have to be squished together, but makes you feel like you're with these people a little more. It doesn't feel like it's this open world. It feels a lot more character focused by changing that aspect ratio. They do this a lot by just giving you a lot of good character moments. And overall, it's a really interesting movie. I think it's a really interesting experience, and I didn't really understand it while I was watching it. It all came together a lot more. It all pieced together in my mind a lot better, and I'm really excited to watch it again, and I want to keep rewatching it over and over to really get behind what it's really trying to say about the human experience. It would have affected me a lot emotionally if I just knew what was really happening, but that's also what I love about it. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you, oh, this is, you know, let me tell you exactly what's going on. They don't have people walking around giving you this explanation of what really happened. They don't really do that. And I feel like that's, in that way, it's a lot more mysterious, it's a lot more ambiguous, but it's also beautiful, and it feels like how I would think through this. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to give you a mild spoiler. The whole movie is basically in the mind of one person. It's kind of all just one hypnotic experience going through this guy's mind. It's like a fake conversation with himself. The dialogue, the script, it all feels really authentic, and it all feels very human. So I think this is the best movie of the year that I've seen. I haven't seen a lot of other films that have come out this year, but this is definitely the best, but not a favorite. Everything I think Onward should have been. even though they're two very different movies, I feel like the approach to Soul feels very unique, and the approach to Onward wasn't. Onward was such an unoriginal and tired movie. It did everything I expected it to. It was so predictable. But Soul does the complete opposite. It completely subverted my expectations. I did not know where the movie was going to go. And if you've seen from the trailers, obviously, it's not a spoiler, but our main character, kind of dies. But he dies in the first, 9 minutes of the movie, which I thought was so interesting. It just kind of jumps right into it. And I do wish they, built the character a little more before then, but it did still shock me. It was a really shocking way to open the film. There's a moment where there's a twist 40 minutes into the movie, and then they have another twist. Bringing you to these different locations and these different experiences with meeting these different characters along the way, I think it's really interesting. I think it's a really daring way to structure a film, because it's not very straightforward. It has a lot of twists and turns. They're not the kind you would expect. It's just kind of the story goes in different directions, and I really like the way it highlights, the human experience and emotion and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a really good movie. I think Jamie Foxx did a really good job with the voice acting. Tina Fey did a really good job as 22, and obviously the animation is gorgeous. This is some of the best animation I've seen in the 21st century, to be honest. Everything looks photorealistic, but the characters look very unique. It's a really good movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly recommend it. It's definitely one of the best films of the year. You're disappointed? I guess I understand, but this is definitely my favorite movie of the year. I don't think it's the best movie of the year, but yeah, it's definitely my favorite. What I really like about Palm Springs is its ability to just know exactly what it is and then just go for it. It just runs with the concept, and it doesn't really get distracted. It doesn't really get very self-indulgent. It doesn't really think about its premise too much. I really appreciated it for that, because it doesn't feel like your typical comedy, because I feel like so many comedies today, especially American ones, like I said with Eurovision, they get so tedious, and they feel like we need to fit that 2-hour length. It doesn't work, because they're trying so hard, tell a really interesting story. But when it comes down to it, most of these comedies don't really have that interesting stories. I never wanted to watch The King of Staten Island, because that movie was 2.5 hours long, and I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to sit through a 2.5 hour movie if it was going to be a comedy. Comedies shouldn't be that long. And I feel like if you're relying a lot on jokes, you need to keep it short, because you're just going to get off track. But Palm Springs completely understands this concept. It completely understands what it is, and it goes for it. It has a target, and it reaches right for that target. Full bullseye, and it never gets distracted. And I really like the way this story is told. I really like the characters a lot. They're not these super deep and fleshed out characters, but they're interesting, and they're characters I cared about. Played by really likable actors. Andy Samberg, I think, is the funniest actor working today. Christina Milioti. I haven't seen her in that many movies, but I've seen her in The Wolf of Wall Street, and she's really good in that movie. So yeah, they both do terrific jobs, and they have such great chemistry. They feel like just normal people. And I also like how it plays on the romantic comedy cliches. It doesn't feel like your typical romantic comedy. It feels like it's doing something a little bit different. It takes the concept of Groundhog Day, but it feels completely fresh. I don't know how, but it does. It's probably just the way it's directed. It's maybe the actors. I don't know. Even though I recognized all of these plot points, all of these story beats, it never felt tired. It never felt repetitive, and it always felt fresh and new. And I just don't see that with a lot of comedies anymore. I feel like they constantly go down this really obvious, predictable thing. But even when the argument comes, the inevitable argument in the movie that you always have in a romantic comedy, I feel like a lot of movies are we need to have an excuse to have an argument, but this is when the argument actually works its way into the narrative. It feels like a normal argument, and I care about the argument. I care about what they're talking about, because it makes sense what they're saying. They also don't dive into the time loop thing that much. They don't over explain it, and I really like that. It really gave a lot of trust in the audience to really know what was going on. This is exactly what I needed in 2020. This movie is so relaxing. It is so chill and exciting to sit through. It feels fresh. It makes me happy. That's exactly what I needed. Yeah, it's still an 8 out of 10. It's not a perfect movie, but when it comes to 2020, it's perfect for me. It's my perfect movie. It's the movie I needed, and it just puts a smile on my face. It makes me laugh, but it never was in a way that felt manipulative. It was just a genuinely happy movie, and it was just so fun to sit through. It was probably my most fun experience this year. A lot of people are saying this is the best comedy of the year, and I would agree. This movie just completely understood what it was going for, and it just went for it. It never acted like it was this masterpiece. It never, when it got serious, it never acted like we're so emotional. It just had an argument, and it never felt like it was shoving down your throat that it's the serious part now it's time to get serious. It never really did that, and I really like that about the movie. It's definitely my favorite movie of the year. I haven't seen that many, like I said, and I'm gonna be watching a lot more over the next couple of months, and so I'm gonna leave my Letterboxd list in the description below so you can check on that, for updates and all that stuff, if I'm gonna change it. So yeah, those are my favorite movies from 2020.
Now for the section which I call movies that shocked me, which are basically movies that I saw for the first time this year that I just did not see coming, that didn't really I didn't know were going to be as good as they were, and these were the movies that just really connected with me, really loved.
So what I like a lot about Time, it's able to be really sweet and heartwarming, obviously, but it never feels cheesy to me. It always feels very wholesome, like it's earned, every moment of it. And obviously, the relationship between our two main leads is awesome. But another thing I also liked was, it's not really all a romance movie. Like, that's definitely an aspect of it. It takes a big chunk of the movie out. But if you really look at it, this movie is extremely life-centered. It's just covering this guy's life and how he uses his ability. Also, I feel like a lot of people would have problems with the characters being like really good people. They're like, well, they're not relatable. But I would say they're more role models than they are actually emotionally distant from the audience. They're all just, this is a movie that's just genuinely happy, and it's happy to be alive. And it really shocked me at how good it actually was. It's such an entertaining premise that shouldn't really work or get repetitive after a while, but it never really does. It always maintains its energy, it maintains its entertainment factor, does its best with its premise, and I am really shocked at how good it actually turned out. Really beautiful direction. I never cried during it, but I definitely wanted to, because it just touches on a lot of things that just feel very personal, so I don't see that much in normal Hollywood movies anymore, and so I'm really glad that I was able to check this one out. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story has to be one of the biggest comedic surprises ever. Now, I saw Tropic Thunder for the first time this year, and I think that's one of the most brilliant scripts in modern comedic filmmaking, but I'd have to say this one's better. And plus, Tropic Thunder wasn't that much of a genuine surprise. I mean, I already knew it was going to be funny, and it was exactly what I really expected it to be, but Walk Hard completely exceed my expectations. The more I rewatch it, the more I really appreciate it, because I'm a really big fan of the music biopic genre. I think they're really fascinating movies to watch, but if you really sit through this one, you really start to realize what this is really tackling, and it's oddly inspiring. This movie shocked me at how inspiring it actually turned out to be. A big standout here, John C. Reilly. Really, really underrated actor. No one really talks about how great of a comedic actor he is, and a great dramatic actor as well. But he pulls off every emotion he needs to, and he is just the right amount of dumb and just the right amount of funny, and it really works, because I'm not really a fan of the dumb comedy that much, but it really works here for what they're trying to say, what they're trying to do, and it really, really pulled off. I also like how it feels like a biopic. It feels like it was supposed to be about an actual person, but it's a comedy. It doesn't feel like some fake movie. It feels like a genuine biopic. It's just making fun of that genre. Every performance too, just all the supporting roles, they just understand how stupid it's supposed to be, but they don't take it too stupidly that it's unfunny.
I know. The 60s are an important and exciting time.
Know when to be subtle, and they know when to be over the top. And they mix the two well, almost perfectly. This is one of the most clever scripts I've ever seen in modern comedic filmmaking, and I was genuinely shocked at how good it actually was. This movie makes me laugh. I quote it all the time. I showed it to my family. We now all quote it together.
I can play through the pain.
And maybe you should have thought about this before you punch your landlord while you got the laryngitis.
I guess it's just no music tonight, boss.
Move, Hickey! People come here to dance erotically.
Hilarious. And also the soundtrack as well. I mean, this is a really, really clever soundtrack, and how it's making fun of music from the time, and it actually applies a lot to the plot. If you really listen to the lyrics in the song, they're really clever. It's a really clever comedy. I just don't see comedies that are clever anymore, that are able to just be this intelligent when it comes to the script writing process. The only reason I saw it was I wanted to get more into David Fincher. I wanted to do that video. And I heard a lot about it. Mostly the tone was very dark, and it was just a very grim movie. But the way they go about it made me feel comfortable in this environment. At least it made me feel immersed into the environment, and it never really made me feel as disgusting as I thought it may make me feel. Obviously, there are scenes that are incredibly disturbing, but that's kind of the point. It's supposed to show that harsh reality of the world. I mean, that's something that Fincher tackles a lot, so it's not all that new. But I definitely understand why people wouldn't want to watch this movie, but I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed it. Maybe that's just Fincher, or maybe that's because it's a genuinely great film. It's also one of the best looking movies I've ever seen. I think this is probably Fincher's best looking movie. Like, visually, this is a beautiful, gorgeous looking movie. Every shot is nearly perfect. So yeah, this is definitely one of the bigger surprises of the year. I did not think I was gonna like it. I did not think I was gonna have a good time with it, but I ended up having a blast. I really felt invested in the characters. I wasn't as invested in the story, but I was mostly really invested in those characters. This movie was very delightful. So different. It was such a different concept. The idea of a writer writing a movie and then a person being kind of controlled. It also has an all-star cast, and everyone did a great performance. It wasn't just like, oh, well, there's, you know, famous people in the movie. It was like, it was genuinely great. And so I just was really happy watching this movie. It really was a delightful surprise that really put a smile on my face. Yeah. This movie is so surprising. I did not expect it to be this good at all. And growing up, this is kind of the movie I wasn't allowed to watch. It was kind of that Disney movie you couldn't really touch. I can see now why. This is one of Disney's most ambitious, edgiest, darkest films I've seen from them. And that's why I kind of love it. I don't love it just because it's dark. I feel like that's a really stupid reason to like something. I feel like this has some of the best characters, some of the best writing I've ever seen in a Disney film. The script is fantastic. I mean, you don't really give it credit because it's an animated movie, but like the dialogue, the characters are fully fleshed out. We have a lot of interesting songs. I feel like this has maybe my favorite Disney soundtrack of all time. While they may not be the catchiest like Aladdin or The Lion King or something, I feel like they are the best on a technical level when it comes to just the writing of the songs. There's a lot of variance in notes. I love the way it's all sung. It feels like it was actually sung in a cathedral. It's like really powerful. It gets you pumped. They make everything feel so large with this chorus, this huge ensemble chorus playing, singing. It's just so big and awesome. It really makes everything feel so much more large in scope. It makes it feel so much more epic. But when you get down to the lyrics, I have listened to a lot of the songs over and over again, that not a single line in any of those songs feels out of place, or it doesn't belong, or it's random. I feel like that happens with a lot of not just Disney songs, but just songs in general, catchy songs, is that you're just so used to hearing them, you don't really realize that there's a lot of throwaway lines that don't make a lot of sense. They're only in there so it can rhyme with another word in the song that is important. Every single line in all these songs makes sense. It's like poetry, and it's beautiful. The way they capture Paris is so massive, and it really immerses you into it. Really what it comes down to is just that heart, that message about not judging people based on their looks, things like that. And Quasimodo is one of the most tender, kind-hearted Disney protagonists I've ever seen. He's somebody who just doesn't understand the world around him, and his optimism is really something I liked. Obviously, we got Frollo, who is easily the best Disney villain of all time. There's no question. He is the definitive best. He's the most threatening. He's the most bad guy I've ever seen. He's just an awful human being. He's just a living, punchable scumbag. The way they execute him, not really taking responsibility for his action, kind of like, you know, an impulsive mechanism where that's just how he responds to certain things. I feel like it's a really interesting way to dissect a character. So definitely one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. Now, it suffers from some real tonal issues, and it has a lot of problems, and I feel like you can go over that and nitpick it all day. But when it comes down to it, it's a really powerful, moving story with some of the most gorgeous music I've ever heard in general, with some of the most gorgeous animation I've ever seen in a Disney film. So, definitely up there. Definitely watch it. I think this is Disney's most underrated movie. It's criminally underrated. No one ever talks about it. But I feel like it's about time people get out there and really start talking about this movie, because it's really mind-blowing. Yeah, this movie really got to me. And maybe that's because of things that were going on in the world that really affected me about it, but I feel like it's a movie that is so incredibly relevant to this day. Yes, it's very controversial, a lot of the things you will be hearing in the film. It's what real people think, and it's a scary thing because it's garbage, and so you have to like really let yourself go and not think about how offensive the things these characters are saying, because obviously they're wrong, and it's very obvious that they are. I love their approach to this story. I love the filmmaking here. Kind of this raw, authentic filmmaking that just feels very, gritty and real, but at the same time it's very experimental in the way it's all done. A lot of the camera work is very interesting. The way they're able to highlight liquids, that's a really interesting thing I noticed while watching it, was just kind of their emphasis on liquids and bringing the detail within that. Very specific, but it's true. It's like a real thing in there. Edward Norton obviously is completely, he disappears into this role. He is incredible in this movie. I know a lot about it. I didn't really have any desire to see it until I saw some people reacting to it and they were crying. And I'm not saying I like movies that make me emotional, but I kind of do like movies that make me emotional, because I feel like that's really important. If a film can touch you or make you feel something, that's a good thing. I hate walking out of a movie not feeling anything, because I feel like there was no point. If it gave me an emotion, that means it actually gave me something in the end. And this movie made me sad. It disturbed me. It made me angry. It did a lot of different things, because the film is basically based around anger. Well, a lot of the theme is don't rely on anger. So it's just a really interesting approach. So yeah, that dinner scene for sure is one of the best scenes I've ever seen in a movie. The way it escalates from being something really low key to just a normal conversation to being completely insane and evil. It's crazy how much that escalated, but that's kind of how it is, and I love the approach to it. I feel like this movie could have been really over the top and, I wouldn't say goofy, but maybe going a little too far, maybe being a little pretentious or preaching at you like you couldn't take it seriously. But I did, and that's mostly because it's just so well acted, especially Edward Norton, who carries the film all the way to the end. I don't think I've ever cried this much during a movie before. I think that's the most I've ever cried during a movie, and it's just a really human story. It's really simple. It's really simple filmmaking, but it gets the job done. And that's why I'm really excited for what Ryan Coogler's going to end up doing with his career, because this is a really great film to start off your career with. It really blew me away. I like Creed a lot too, but this movie is on a different level, I think. I just love the way it portrays everyday life. It just presents life. You get to spend a day with this guy, and that's how you're able to care about him. That's how you're able to develop him. It's just through seeing him through simple actions. There's only one flashback in the entire movie to give you that extra layer, but besides that, the rest of the movie is just going through a day with this guy. That's it. But it's simple, and you like the guy, and you feel attached to him. And then at the end, when all the things go down, it hits a lot harder. I saw this film exactly a week before all of the stuff going on in America happened, and it helped me sympathize with the situation a lot better. It made me really understand what was really going on. That's what makes this such a powerful and moving film, is its ability to get you in a mindset of another person. So I would highly recommend checking this film out. It's very slow. Nothing that crazy happens in it. You just spend a day with this guy, but it's extremely interesting. The Before trilogy is my favorite thing I've seen all year. If I overhype these movies, people are gonna think, walking into them, that they're these really mind-blowing, insane experiences with all these twists and turns, but there's not really. It's capturing the beauty of everyday life through these two people that are so interesting from scene one, and their conversation, their chemistry is so magnetic, you can't really look away from it. I feel like a lot of people that say, oh, this looks boring, aren't really getting the big picture of it, and I feel if that sounds boring to you, just two people talking, go watch the movies. You'll be shocked at how interesting dialogue really can be. In that first film, I didn't really appreciate that much on that first watch. I was like, alright, it's just people talking, that's it. And when you watch the other ones and then rewatch them again, you start to see like the things they're setting up for these characters. What I really like is that there's not that much consistency. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm saying what I mean by that is there's not this constant reminder of what happened in the last movie. You know, a lot of the things, a lot of the interest people have, like if Jesse says, I'm interested in one thing in Before Sunrise, then in Before Midnight, he's talking about something completely different. Or he says, I didn't like that thing. Or they remember different experiences differently. That's just the way human nature is, and they do such a brilliant job portraying that. Every scene in all these movies is so incredibly interesting to me. Are they even in a good relationship? Is this a good relationship or not? My favorite part of these is the passage of time for sure, because they're all shot and taking place 10 years apart from each other, so they're at different points in their lives. First one, it's like their 20s, their mid-20s, and they don't really have a path. Then they're in their 30s, and then they kind of come to this realization that my path has already been discovered, but getting to know this person again and reconnecting with them, could I rearrange that path and redirect it? It'd be a good thing or a bad thing, and whatever they choose, it's probably going to be bad. That's the hard part about these decisions. And then the third one is kind of what it is, the reality of our situation, showing these characters in their 40s kind of going through this marriage that didn't exactly work out, and you see them go through these arguments and you're still trying to figure out, is this a good or bad relationship? So there are things like that really connect with me on a personal level. So all three of these films feel like a complete perfect package, and this is probably my favorite trilogy of all time, to be honest. It's such an engaging set of films that I'm so shocked that they were able to keep it that way. So yeah, the Before trilogy is probably my favorite trilogy of all time, and I think everyone should go check them out. If anyone asks me what's a good movie recommendation, I'm usually going to recommend these films because they're the movies I can't really gush enough. And I'm probably going to make a video in depth about all three of the movies. So yeah, if that happens this year, hopefully. If it doesn't actually happen, just bug me and tell me I should do it.
Now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. Actually, no one's actually been waiting for this, but this next section is basically every movie I saw this year that I gave 5 stars on my first initial watch of watching it. So movies that I've already seen, like Before Sunrise, I initially gave it like 4 stars or something on Letterboxd, and then I saw it again, and then it wasn't actually movies like that. I'm not going to count. I'm going to count films that on that first initial watch it all clicked with me all at once. Life is Beautiful is actually beautiful. I loved every minute of this thing because the first half of it is kind of just a simple romance. It's just a really eccentric, excited, lively guy, but he gives a fantastic performance here. Basically that first half, maybe first third probably, is him just trying to get this girl's attention, and that's just a cute fantasy-like romance. And then halfway through there's a big time jump, and then he has a son. And the son is Jewish, just like him. And you kind of just like are going with it, and you don't realize that in the background the Holocaust is happening, and they get sent to a concentration camp, and the mom tries to reconnect with them. It's a really, really beautiful story because you just don't see it coming. It's a really underlying thing, and then it comes out of nowhere. And you're like, huh? Whoa, this has been going on the whole time. And then once it gets to the stuff where they're in the concentration camp, that's where I feel like the film got extremely original. Our main character starts telling his son that this is all a game. Now, a lot of people have gone record and say this film is really offensive because of how it portrays the Holocaust. I would strongly disagree, because I feel like it's trying to give a different approach to the Holocaust. And it does a fantastic job immersing you into this world. It's a really strange comedy drama, because he's telling his son this is all a game and there's a prize at the end. And the kid goes along with that, not realizing the harsh reality of everything that's going on. And this dad does everything in his power to make sure his son doesn't understand really what's at stake, so the son can live a happy life and he won't have to have those traumatizing memories later in his life. It's a really beautiful story. I love the ending. I think it's a really profound ending. It really brings everything together in a satisfying manner. This is probably my favorite foreign film that I've seen so far. This film is fantastic. It is across the board one of my all-time favorite movies. It really hit me hard. Before Sunset, yes, I talked about this one. I was kind of watching it and I was like, okay, wow, I'm into this. And then it ends and I'm like, yeah, I was into that whole thing. I'm giving it 5 stars. But the more I watch it, I feel like the more I really, really appreciate it. That first initial watch was just me so shocked at how interested I was in literally every scene. But the more I watch it, I can dissect so much from it. And that's what makes the Before trilogy so special. The whole part in the car is really where everything explodes all at once. All that emotion just comes at you all at once. And it doesn't feel over the top. It doesn't feel like it's trying to win Oscars. It feels authentic. It feels like a normal conversation. Part that really shocked me the most was probably the fact that she's trying to get out of the car and he's telling her to come back in. And you can't really tell. I can't tell from which viewpoint. Is she overreacting or is he underreacting and trying to take her in to this relationship that's not supposed to work out because he's a married man anyway? You really think about that and you're like, is this supposed to work out or not? It really replicates life in a really profound way. And the things they talk about are really deep things. There's a part where Jesse's talking about never living in the moment, which is the exact way I am. I can never live in the moment. And hearing that, I was like, somebody understands. And I've never heard anyone in my actual life say that in that poetic of a way. The way Jesse says it is the exact way I feel. And it was so weird that the first time I ever really heard it that explicitly was in a movie. And the movie really, really spoke to me. It really makes me think about the whole human experience in general, about love, about death, about life. Covers all of that in the span of 80 minutes. And at the same time, you still get to develop these characters, get to know these characters, you get to really feel like you've been in their shoes for the past 10 years, even though you're only seeing them in this one moment. But I feel like I know these people's lives. I really feel like I was a part of their lives. I feel like I was there those past 10 years. But it's just all done through conversation. Seven is a freaking experience. I really got into David Fincher's movies this year, starting with The Social Network. Seven is kind of the film that made me watch all of his movies all at once. It made me go, I want to watch this guy's movies. Seven is a film that's so immersive, it really sucked me into this world. A lot of people say the movie's overrated, a lot of people say the movie's slow or it's not really their thing. But for me, I love it. I think it's really incredible as from a filmmaking standpoint, from a screenwriting standpoint, just from a world building standpoint. This world feels like a world I could live in. Even though it's really dark and gross, I still feel like I could live in it because David Fincher's filmmaking is so visceral and he really knows how to capture this world. And then we got 2 really likable characters, but the film just works overall as a narrative and it comes to one of the best third acts ever in a movie. I feel like a lot of people say those last 20 minutes of the film overshadow the rest of it. Like they're the only good thing, the rest of it's just boring nonsense. But I would strongly disagree. The thing is I was watching this movie late at night, I was super tired and drowsy, but I never dozed off. I wanted to pause it and start it in the morning so I could like finish it so I wouldn't fall asleep, but I couldn't. I physically couldn't. I was so hooked into the world I didn't want to pause it. I was so into this movie. Every scene is just so intense, so depressing, and it really gets you into the mood of where all these characters are coming from. And then it touches on a lot of interesting messages about, you know, human mortality and all that cool stuff. So this is definitely an all-time favorite. It's my favorite David Fincher movie. Prisoners is on a whole new level. This is probably the best acted movie I've ever seen. Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Terrence Howard. I've never seen a movie where every single performance is near perfect across the board, but everyone feels like a normal person. And so once these things start to break out and these emotions start to come out, it never feels over the top. What makes this so special and stand out from these other thrillers of this kind is that it really dissects it to death. It shows these people from all these different perspectives, and you really get to see what's going on, how this could really affect a family. Because I think kidnapping, oh yeah, it's a cool plot for a thriller. But they really get into it and make it really depressing, but like not in a way that's just trying to be depressing for the sake of being depressing. It's like legitimately sad. And I felt bad for these people. But they did such a good job building this world and building this atmosphere with these characters I cared about from scene one that I couldn't take my eyes off of the screen. When I rewatched it recently, I really noticed that how great these characters are when it comes to their development. This is great writing. I can't praise it enough. This is an all-time favorite now. And I don't say that very much. I don't see a movie and just say, oh, this is an all-time favorite now. You would think from this opening scene, from the opening minutes, you'd think that's the whole movie, that they would just depend on horrific graphic imagery. But that's really not what it focuses on. It really just focuses on this brother and his sister trying to survive. It just stays with them the whole movie. There's not a scene where they're not in it. You're just kind of overtaking how personal it is, character-centered it is, rather than just focusing on a big event like the war. I knew from the beginning they were gonna die because they say that at the beginning of the movie, literally the first line of the movie, but I still wanted to see them live, and I really wanted to see them succeed. It's all more powerful when they give you that information at the very beginning of the film. So yeah, Grave of the Fireflies is one of the saddest, most personal war films, anti-war films I've ever seen. Would strongly recommend it. It's a powerful, beautiful film. Ooh. Wow. Spirited Away, man, this is it's one of the biggest shockers the whole year, you know. I didn't really see it coming, because it's not really that it shocked me. Like, I knew I was probably gonna love it because I love creative filmmaking. I love Miyazaki's style, but I was still extremely shocked at how speechless the film made me feel. Like, when I walked out of it, I was like, what did I just witness? Because it's not really a plot-driven movie. It's not really something with these huge emotions or these huge twists. It's just you're so overtaken by how big and large and creative this whole world is. You feel like you're in a trance, you're in a dream. It's so weird how it transports you into this world so easily, so seamlessly. And I feel like I've seen this imagery straight out of a dream, straight out of a nightmare. I feel like I've been into these places. It was like deja vu the whole film. That's how creative Miyazaki is as a filmmaker. He really brings this childlike innocence to his films while bringing a lot of creativity and pure uniqueness that you just don't see a lot with animation these days. If I had to say the most beautifully animated movie I've ever seen, it's maybe this one. It looks gorgeous, and it's not like it gave me that much emotion. It wasn't as emotional as Grave of the Fireflies, and I don't think I like it as much as Grave of the Fireflies. But it was so weird because I walked out of it like, I'm gonna give it 5 stars, but I don't know why, because I would feel weird if I gave it anything lower. Like, I felt satisfied giving it that score, but I didn't know why. So I really need to find what's that hook, that emotional hook, not just because everyone else likes it, not just because of the technical aspects. So what did I like personally? I need to figure that out, and I'm excited to rewatch it because it's a really fantastic movie.
Don't judge me. Chadwick Boseman passed away in August, I believe. Was one of the biggest surprises, I think, from any celebrity, because I just didn't see that coming. You know, with someone like Robin Williams, obviously I'm hurt and broken over that. But it was really surprising with Chadwick Boseman because I had no idea he was sick. I had no idea he had any kind of pain at all going on. Once I found out he had cancer, that was crazy. And so it really started to get to me. I felt really bad for the next couple of days because of the guy. You know, he's a legend. And I feel like people kept saying he's Black Panther and saying rest in peace King, which is okay. I feel like that's a respectful character to be sent off with, but he represented a lot of other people. He played a lot of different people. I want to see Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I'm really excited to check that out because I hear he's fantastic in the movie. But he's also just a person. And I feel like people need to remember that. Just saying Black Panther died is a little disrespectful to the person, because that's not who died. Black Panther is going to keep living on. He's a comic book character. He doesn't exist. Chadwick Boseman does, and I feel like we need to really respect him and his legacy rather than just acknowledging one character he played for 4 years. I feel like that's really interesting that he kept that a secret before he even became like a big name actor, a household name. That's a really humble and admirable thing that he did. He didn't tell anyone because he didn't want anyone to make a big deal out of it. It shows he was, from what I see, he wasn't self-absorbed. He didn't constantly just tell everybody, I have cancer, please support me. He didn't say that. He just acted. And looking back at different things in his career, I can totally kind of see it now. And it's really sad. So it's just sad that he had to go that early, because he was such an exciting up-and-coming actor. So it's a tragedy. I never talked about it on the channel. I tried to, but I just never made up the courage to sit down and talk about that. So now that everything's kind of over, I'm just here to say I was very sad when it happened, and it's too bad. But let's leave this video off on a positive note. So what's my plan moving forward? What am I gonna do with this channel? Now, I've had an idea, and I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I was planning on doing it this year, but for some reason I just never made the time to, and hopefully I'll make the time to do it this year. But I want to kind of do an overarching series where I talk about my favorite movies of every genre, my favorite actors, my favorite actresses. I want to make a sequel to my animated movies video, because I've been watching a lot of animated movies, and I'm going to be doing a lot of different things, different rankings, different lists, top 10s, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm really excited because I want to get all my thoughts out kind of all at once. Everyone can see them, and then I won't have to think about it anymore. It's just kind of like, when I have that idea, I just want to get it out before I forget, or before I just go crazy thinking about it. So I'm really excited to go through those with you guys. But I kind of want to end the series with a top 30 favorite movies, where I talk about my top 30 favorite movies, which I've been working on for many years, where everything is placed, where I just sit down, I talk to you like I'm talking to you now. And then a week later, hopefully, how much time passes, I don't know, I'm going to do a top 100 video to really be the cherry on top of everything. Just do a supercut of all of my favorite movies of all time that you guys can access. I'll put the links to those lists in the description when I make those videos. I've already made thumbnails and everything for these videos, so I'm really excited to see where they go, what happens with them. So that's really my biggest plan. I'm planning on just doing the What I Watched monthly series for now, but if things keep happening, I'm probably going to stop if the world opens up back again. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. It's been a really crazy year, a really crazy ride for all of us, but I'm really glad I've been able to just talk about movies with you guys on this channel. Really, really thank you guys for being here. So without further ado, let's... Oh yeah, wait. It's the time again, guys. Now it's time to hear a word from our sponsor. Don't you guys love award season? Yeah, neither do I. Sorry. So thank you guys, as always, for watching. It's always great talking movies with you guys. Be sure for our next video, where I hopefully start my series. So yeah, this is Ethan Butler signing out. As always, if you like this and you want to see more, click right here to see more. Oh man, I really gotta find myself a catchphrase.